Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, my name is Tori and today I'm going to share with you guys some books that I think make for really great cozy winter reads. So I did film a video kind of similar to this but for fall recommendations. I think actually a lot of the books that I put on that list would be great recommendations for the winter season as well, but the only difference is a lot of the books on that previous list, they were really kind of dark in nature, kind of grim in their tone. So the books that I have here today, they're not dark at all. I just think they will make for really great and comforting cozy reads. There is one on here that is a little bit bleak, but I do have 6 books that I want to talk about. A couple of them are all-time favorites of mine, so I'm really excited to talk more about them. So let's get into it. So the first book I want to share with you is the one that is extremely bleak in its tone, but I think it just kind of has that, it almost has like a warm kind of comforting feel to it as you're reading about these characters, and I think it does leave you with this tone of hopefulness at the end. And so that book is The Lonely Hearts Hotel, and this is by Heather O'Neill. This is one of my favorite books ever. So in this book we're following 2 main characters, Rose and Piero, and they were both abandoned at birth. This takes place in the early 1900s in Montreal, and so the 2 of them, they become really close friends at this orphanage that they're living in. And while they're at the orphanage, they have all of these dreams of doing just, you know, great things with their lives, and they have dreams of starting their own kind of traveling, almost traveling circus or carnival sort of show, and you just kind of the logistics of that and making up the acts and everything. And the 2 of them just really form a really strong bond while they're at this orphanage. And so when they become of age, though, when they're teenagers, they have to leave the orphanage, and the 2 of them go down some really dark paths once they leave the orphanage. Rose goes down a path of prostitution and sex, and then Piero, he goes down the path of heavy drug usage, and he becomes kind of like a petty thief as well. So they're just really doing whatever they can to survive, and it really starts to take a toll on them. But as the book progresses, Rose and Piero, they cross paths again once they're a bit older, and once these roads that they've taken have really shaped the new people that they are. But when they come back together, they fall back into this friendship that they had, but they also still remember the dreams that they had together of opening this carnival show and performing, and they never really lose sight of those childhood dreams that really fueled them and helped them survive in the orphanage. So this is honestly such a beautifully written story. This is, of the recommendations, this is definitely like the darkest. The rest of them aren't nearly, I wouldn't say that they're like extremely dark or bleak reads, but this one just has a really cold and kind of bitter tone to it. But at the same time, once you finish it, I don't know, it's so thought-provoking, and you just have all of these feelings of hope that you can achieve dreams and just keep going after them. So I really love that aspect of the book, but the tone, I think, could definitely wear some people down, but I think this is a great read. Okay, so the next book I'm going to recommend is The Lies of Locke Lamora, and this is by Scott Lynch, and this is the first book in the Gentleman Bastard series. I think this is just, I don't know why I associate this book with being cozy and warm and wintertime. I don't know if it even takes place during that season, but there's something about it. There's something about these characters and the bonds that they have that just feel very comforting, very warm. So I think this will make for a really great winter read. But this, we are following our main character, Locke Lamora, and he is a part of this group known as the Gentleman Bastards, and they're really just kind of thieves, criminals in this world of Cormorant. And they have a reputation for stealing from the rich, but instead of actually giving the money away to people in need, they keep everything that they steal for themselves. But one of the things that the Gentleman Bastards do, they plot against royal and noble people and just really scheme and try to come up with these elaborate plans to try to get money off of these really rich people. So just kind of going through the antics of that and just seeing how these schemes play out in their plots, it's so entertaining and it's fun, and I really think this is such a great example of a found family type of story that I think you could really connect to for this time of year. So this is a great first book in an epic fantasy series, and I highly recommend you check this out if you haven't done so. The next book I have here is just classic, and that is The Hobbit, and this is by J.R.R. Tolkien. I actually have not read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I read The Hobbit like a couple of years ago at this point, so pretty late to the game. But I actually have more of appreciation for this book now than I did when I first finished it a couple of years ago. So this is just the classic adventure story of Bilbo Baggins. Bilbo is a hobbit, lives in the hobbit hole, and he just has a pretty unexciting life, and he's very content with that. He doesn't travel anywhere, he's not very adventurous, and is just kind of fine living his normal every day-to-day life. But everything really changes for Bilbo one day when Gandalf arrives and, you know, presents him with this epic adventure story to take back this treasure. So, I mean, this is just, again, a classic story. I think it's just adventurous and charming and very warm. And I think if you are like me and just kind of late to getting around to reading The Hobbit, I mean, there's never a wrong time to read anything. But I think if you've been wanting to pick it up, this will make for a really great, cozy winter read. So you definitely have to check this out. The next book I have here is another favorite of mine, and that is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I don't talk about this book nearly enough. I mention it like every now and then, every blue moon, but I love this book so much. It is extremely popular now, but I mean, if you still have not read Station 11, now is just such a great time to do it. This is a post-apocalyptic story, and the story actually begins during a production of King Lear, and the character that's playing King Lear, he collapses on stage of a heart attack, and once that happens, the world just basically goes to crap. And then from there, the story really flashes forward about 15 or so years, and we're seeing life after everything has really collapsed, and we're following a couple of characters throughout this whole story, and this is so great. I really love this book so much. We're just kind of flashing backwards and forwards and seeing the early days of this pandemic that happened, and then seeing the aftermath of it all these years later. And I just love seeing how characters come together in this story, but also how it just really puts things into perspective as people try to rebuild and live in a new world pretty much. So this is one that I think is definitely worth the read if you haven't done so already. It's a really quiet post-apocalyptic story, but I love it so much, and just the way that Emily St. John Mandel handles the two different time periods is just, I think it's great. So you have to read this. The next book I have is a great political fantasy that is just something that you can completely immerse yourself in for the cold season, and that is the Traitor by Cormorant. I love this book. I think you might be seeing this book again on another list in a few weeks or so. So this is, like I mentioned, a political fantasy. It starts when our main character, Beru Cormorant, is a young girl, and the people from the Empire of Masks, they invade Beru's island and just kind of take over everything. And because of that, Beru, she begins harboring this really intense hatred toward the Empire of Masks that never really goes away. And the older she gets, she vows to infiltrate their ranks in order to get back at them for taking over her island. And she really sticks to that. Beru, she studies really hard at the school on her island. And then once she's old enough, the Empire actually puts her in charge of this smaller region within their land. And it's there that Beru is put in this really prominent position where she can kind of start, it's like moving chess pieces around. She does some really heavy plotting and just really tries to maneuver the politics of the empire, and just really trying to keep as much attention off of herself as possible as she's making all of these strategic moves. So I love this. This is definitely a slower paced, more quiet story, but I think if you're just looking for something really rich and immersive to kind of put yourself in for the season, this is definitely it. And then finally, the last book that I want to share is one that I don't think I've mentioned this book since I read it earlier this year, but I actually really enjoyed this book, and that is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, and this is the first book in her adult fantasy series. The second one comes out, I hope, in 2021. I'm really looking forward to that. This was really good. This, I think, is definitely worth the hype. And the primary reason I'm recommending this is because of its size. This is pretty chunky. This is like almost 800 pages, if not more than that. So this is just such a great world, I think, to put yourself in. And there's also a really great mystery element to it, and I think you'll find some characters that you can really latch onto for this story. But in this, we are following our main character, Bryce Quinlan, who's half human, half fae, and she's really a party girl. Her and her best friend, they just don't have any cares. They just kind of do whatever they want, go out and party. But something devastating really happens one day, and Bryce finds that her group of close friends, they were all murdered by this demon. And once that happens, that's not a spoiler, it's in the synopsis, but once that happens, the story takes a really dramatic shift in its tone, and it actually becomes really introspective, really dark, really emotional, which I was not expecting. And once that emotional shift in the story happens, Bryce, she's really more reclusive. She's not going out as much anymore, but the demon that attacked her close group of friends, that thing is still out there. And so from there, we meet this other character, Hunt, and he is sent to protect Bryce, and together the two of them try to get to the bottom of what's going on, what's happening before these murders keep piling up essentially. So like I mentioned, I definitely think this is worth the hype. This is a good read, and I can't wait to read book 2 when it comes out. So you definitely have to check this out. So that's it for me, you guys. I really hope you all enjoyed this video. I really appreciate you for watching it. Let me know down in the comments what are some of your favorite cozy winter reads that you love to just kind of sink into this time of year, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.